Hello everyone, my name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and today we are going to be talking about cards of encouragement mainly, but there are some other sentiments that I pulled in from the stamp sets that I was using. I hope that this video finds everybody well and safe. My heart goes out to all of you during this time as we adapt to our new normal. It is the inspiration behind the cards that were designed for today's video. It's just been weighing so heavily on my mind and so many other people. In a lot of the crafting groups that I'm in, so many people are, really going the extra mile to get encouragement cards out there. But if you do happen to be in a circumstance where you can't celebrate a birthday, or you can't go on vacation, or you want to thank somebody for doing something kind for you, or in the worst case scenario, if you have to say goodbye to somebody, or you are in a situation where you need a sympathy card, we have a little bit of all of that in today's video. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm handheld, which is different. The reason that I am doing that is because with this, I just wanted you to be able to see the dimension of the side stepper card that we're going to be working with and working on today. One thing that I will say, once this was created, so just so that you can see here in terms of the layers, that if I were to do this again, I would leave a little white border around the people to help differentiate them from the background. But I mean, I love how it turned out. Such a sweet card. Just something a little bit different when you are trying to cheer someone up or encourage them and let them know that you're thinking of them. To all of my new subscribers, I want to welcome you here. I'm so overjoyed to have you here. I recently had quite a lot of people subscribe, and I'm so thrilled and so honored that you would take the time to do that and spend time here on this video. And to all of my current and returning subscribers and just viewers, everybody in general, thank you so much for being here. For the format of this video, I just want to walk you through basically how this video is going to go today. You might see the lighting changing a little bit. I'm filming at different times of the day, just basically where I can squeeze it in. What I'm going to do is walk you through the details of these cards, and then if I'm able to speak during certain segments of the video, I will. And if I can't, meaning my audio would be compromised in some way, if there are other people here in the house, things like that, background noise, then I'll just go ahead and fast forward those parts and just put instructions on the screen. And I appreciate everybody's patience during this time. So with this card, this is actually a side stepper card. This uses a couple of different products here. So for this one, we are using Mountain Air. Okay, that's this one right here. We have the stamp set and we have the coordinating dies here. So this is actually a bundle that is available in the 2020 mini catalog. The mini catalog goes until June 2020. I'm not sure of the exact date in June. I'll put a picture up on the screen just to reference it if you need to see it. But that was used for this card. And then we're also going to be using something called Artfully Aware. Okay, Artfully Aware is in the annual catalog, the 2019-2020 annual Stampin' Up! Catalog. I love this stamp set so much, and when we are so influenced right now with feeling like we need to send cards and encouragement and support and everything, I just think that this one could not be more perfect. I'm specifically using this sentiment today. here. Okay, so I used some Stampin' blends and some Stampin' Write markers, and then their outfits are actually paper pieced on. And again, these papers were all part of the sampler pack, but the plaid paper that goes here and here, those are from the golf one. This is from the Peaceful Poppy paper, I believe. I'll put a picture up on the screen. And then this brown paper, I believe, was from the Tropical paper, the Tropical Designer Series paper, but I'll show you that. And the reason why I have papers from all of these different groups is because the sampler pack had all of them. The colors that we used here were the Memento Tuxedo Black ink for the mountains. And then I colored them in with a combination of the dark and light gray granite. And I put just a touch of the basic black light on a few of the mountains just to make that a little bit more dramatic. The ink that I used to stamp our trees, our tree line there, is actually Garden Green. This is also Garden Green, but this has been stamped off once, so that's why it looks slightly lighter. I like the stamped off look for these because it gave a little bit more detail of the tree branches and everything, but even the full color stamp version is awesome too, so just depending. And then that last little piece, if you can see, I'm starting to lose the light here. It's a little bit later in the day, but it is actually from this is that deep blue foil paper from the Peacock, Pretty Peacock came out with this specialty cardstock in 3 colors. And I'll put a picture of that up on the screen so that you can see that. I used that on both cards today. So you'll actually see that the blue paper here too. I'm hoping you can see that that's reflective. That's pretty much walking you through just the basic details of this card. I will be recreating the card. I just don't know as I film this if I'm going to be able to talk through it. So that's why you're hearing so much talk in the beginning, but I'll be sure to reconstruct these cards for you one way or the other. It just may or may not be with my voice. And I'll put music up if I have to put it into fast forward for you all. Okay, and then here, this is really the card that was on my mind. And I had been wanting to do, if you saw my last video, I'm just trying to find, here it is. If you saw my last video, which is the March Paper Pumpkin, I will link to it. The March Paper Pumpkin video, I used the stained glass dies. Okay, so last year, Stampin' Up! Had these 2 things as a bundle. And they had this really gorgeous vellum paper that had just all of these different printed looks on it. I fell in love with it. I mean, it is one of my favorite sets. Now, I did not buy it when it was a bundle. These 2 items are actually still available in the annual catalog this year, but as separate purchases. So I just wanted to make that clear right out of the gate. But I had done one of my very first videos on YouTube as a demonstrator was a haunted house video, and I had used these for the details of the haunted house. And it was funny because the house ended up looking really fancy and pretty, and it didn't really look haunted at all. But I loved it. So anyway, when it came to what's been happening in the world right now, it was the first set that came to my mind because it has that feeling that we all need sometimes when we're either going to, typically if people are going to church or prayer groups, or if they're praying together, or you have some type of a congregation, something like that. This just has that feeling to it. We go, when we do go to church, if you go to mass or just depending what it is, there are these beautiful stained glass windows in the building. All things that we would typically get to see that we can't really enjoy right now temporarily because of what's happening. So one of the things that we can do as card makers and creators is create these scenes to give that feeling, to create that feeling or that emotion, of being there, even if we're not able to be there. A lot of people are attending Mass from home. There are people that are either doing Zoom calls or they're watching it on TV. So this was something that I really wanted to try to capture in a card. And I really thought that these two products would do that beautifully. People are gathering together in whatever ways that they can to, you know, to celebrate or to pray or to, you know, worship. So I love how this turned out. I originally was going to use this stamp here. And this is a testament to the Stampin' blends. I mean, the way that these come to life when you start to color them in is just so beautiful. You can choose whatever color combination that you want, but this was originally going to be the stained glass for the card, and I just want to show you what this looks like. So if you do do some die cut pieces from the frames, and you do want this stamp to be your centerpiece, look at how beautifully that frames that. And you could get some dimension on that and lift, you know, you can pop that up and look at how gorgeous that is. So I'm probably going to end up doing something different with these. I was thinking about doing some smaller cards to kind of capture that same feeling. The card base here is Call Me Clover cardstock. The layering pieces are the blue foil from the Pretty Peacock foil cardstock, the specialty cardstock. And then Whisper White, this is the regular Whisper White that I embossed with the Brick and Mortar 3D embossing folder. And I left it white. There's no coloring on it. There's no impression. And the reason why was because I really wanted this stained glass to stand out and be the focus of this card, to try to capture this feeling of that architecture and that time and, you know, the art and the glass. So we used the Stampin' blends to color in. We used window sheets. It's the clear acetate, and just colored the acetate. And then I glued it on using the fine tip glue because this glue dries clear. So I really like this. I use this anyway because these frames are so thin. You really do want that detail from this tip if you have it or if you can manage it. But if you have any glue at home that dries clear, that'll work for your window sheets. And then Artfully Aware was brought in again. So we used the stained glass dies, the Stampin' blends. I'll tell you what colors, actually. I have it written down right here somewhere. Do you love my notes? I used, for this one, we used the dark pineapple punch for the yellow. I used the light pumpkin pie for those lighter orange colors that are surrounding the star images there. And in the center, we used dark Call Me Clover for the green. I used the light Night of Navy. I have a note that I used the light Night of Navy, but I accidentally ended up using the dark. So you can clearly see that it was the dark one that I was coloring with. But I just wanted to say I did test this out with the light and it was beautiful. So if I color this live, I'm probably going to use the light Night of Navy so you can see the difference between the light and the dark. And then I also used the dark Poppy Parade and the light Seaside Spray. So the Seaside Spray is in between the dark Night of Navy and between the Poppy. So that looks like that lighter glass framing right there. This definitely is color therapy. And by that, I mean, this takes time. That is absolutely for sure. And when I'm fast forwarding myself coloring in these videos, it kind of, you know, it feels like it's going quickly, but I did want to say that with this type of detail in an image, in a stamped image, this is definitely something that if you want to take your mind off of what's happening, if you need to sort of quiet it down and you have the blends, try this because it actually is a wonderful, calming thing to color. So it's not, I know it's not for everyone, but wow. I mean, the end result on this is just beyond. Okay, so it's these two images here, but just put side by side. Together, we make a difference. This was stamped in Night of Navy ink, and that's right here. And then here, so you'll see this is actually on both cards. So from this wood to this wood, and this is actually a good example for you. Again, on Whisper White, I had embossed Whisper White paper using the Pinewood Planks 3D folder. And here I used dark crumb cake, Stampin' Blend to color it. And here I used soft suede. Look at the difference. Now on the ends, I just went a little bit darker and kind of pulled it in to kind of give it a little bit more of an aged wood look. And then if you can see here, I folded a little bit of the wood over our foam strips. So that's this here. These are the foam strips. So I just cut it to size. I wrapped a little bit of the extra wood over it, and then I glued it underneath, just wrapped it around, and I glued the top part to the people so that it looked like seating or a pew or a bench. I just wanted to kind of give it that feeling as if you were, you know, at a place. So here I want to show you my little mistake. So you'll probably see here there's some slight bleeding with the Poppy Parade into the yellow. What had happened was when I went to lay down the colored square, I had laid it down crooked onto the glue. And instead of just leaving it, I pulled it up and tried to reposition it. And the glue had wet the alcohol marker coloring. So the alcohol markers, whenever you color onto anything with it, dries very quickly. So you don't really have to worry about messing it up with your, you know, with your hands because it dries pretty quickly. But if you re-wet it with the glue, just know that when you start to lay it down, you're pretty much locked into to laying it down. You might be able to salvage it a little bit. And for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, if it was all over the place, then I would have redone the card before I started shooting. But I really thought that it was a good example to show you of what can happen to the ink when you rehydrate it with glue as you're gluing it down. Another example of that is if you look at the Call Me Clover, you can kind of see how it looks almost like a swirly, like almost a swirly look to it. And that's because I put the glue around the outer part of this, and it did the same thing to the Call Me Clover, but I thought that that was such a cool look. Like I really thought that that contributed actually to it looking like stained glass, because the stained glass has like a textured look to it. And that's how I think that this looks. So I loved the look, but I wanted to make you aware of it in case that's not a look that you would love. So if you don't want to work with the window sheets like I'm going to be doing today, then you could work with the colored images, okay? And then instead of doing the two squares and the circle, you could just do, you know, 3 of these circles across. If you have, I can't remember the name of the stamp set offhand, but I'll put a picture up on the screen of it because it was one of the stamp sets that I really wished that I had. I think it's an Easter stamp set, or maybe it's a communion stamp set. I'm not sure, but it has an image of a cross on it. So if you, whether you have dies that have a cross, or a stamp set in your collection that has a cross, or if you are interested in purchasing one, they do have one in the annual catalog that I think would have been spectacular here if you do want to be more specific with the card theme that you're going with your scene. But just before I start getting into the actual making of these pieces, I wanted to show the reason why I used the same people here and here was because I just wanted to show a couple of the differences that happen when you're designing cards, but you're using different products. So here I used the Stampin' Blends to color the people. Okay, I used the Stampin' Blends to color the hair, and then I just added in some extra strands with the neutrals from the Stampin' Write markers, which I've done in previous videos, but you'll see me do it again here today. So this is colored with Stampin' Blends Their Clothing, which is much easier, by the way, than paper piecing. Here I paper pieced their clothes on because I wanted it to have a certain look of them being out in nature. You know, while we are able to sort of leave our homes to walk around, you know, the area where we live, a lot of people have had to cancel vacations, or they're not able to go to these majestic areas that maybe they had planned to right now. So you can kind of recapture that or recreate that for them in a card. And I wanted their clothing to feel that way too. So I chose to do paper piecing, but paper piecing is time consuming. So that's why I wanted to show you both, where you're either just coloring it with markers, or if you're adding in your designer series paper to give it a very specific look and feel. When you do paper piecing, you can automatically see that this looks more three-dimensional, at least in my opinion. It looks more three-dimensional than this one. And one of the reasons why is because her arm has actually been cut to accommodate sliding the paper in to make her shirt, okay? And then here, the same thing was done here, where her arm was actually cut a little to accommodate sliding in his shirt. So just so, you know, just those little differences there. But you can either have it be inside or outside, and it just gives it a completely different feeling. And I loved that, and that was something that I wanted to share. With the differences here, just added a little bit. So with the sympathy card, kept the theme, but used the colored stamped image here, and just added a very small touch with the two sequins. For the thank you, we upped the intensity with the sequins, just to kind of show you what that could look like, especially if you don't feel like fully coloring all of the images. You can plan to add some embellishments to be in place of that. And then here we have gems. So these are from the Pretty Peacock. I think I'm not sure if they're called gems or rhinestones. I'll put it up on the screen. But just to show you the difference between the jewel tones. So I changed the color theme. This, I was really trying to stick more with primary colors, which is like your traditional stained glass look. And then here we went a little bit softer with more of the like pastel palette. And then we added the blue, the blue rhinestones. Okay, I am using block D for these two, and I am using block C for these two. So you can see it's a slightly smaller stamp, both from the same stamp set. What I was doing here was I was trying to stamp them close together, but without touching. Okay, so that they look like they are grouped together. Now in the other card, in this card here, I had given them neutral colored clothing, but in this one I think I'm going to go more for the jewel tones, similar to the stained glass. So we have the dark Call Me Clover. I'm also going to get the lights. So just depending on what your color preferences are. I always go down a little bit further than the lines because I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to, position it. Like I ended up covering it here, with the bench or the pew. So you won't see that far down. But if you were to change that, like here on this card, it goes right down to the line. So their clothes actually did extend down beyond the line slightly, if you can see there, because I had used paper piecing and I pulled the paper down just a little bit for each one of them. Now, I want to show you something really quickly about this, just in case I'm not able to say it later. You really want to make sure that whatever colors that you choose for your Stampin' Blends to color this, you see how fine this point comes down to? Now, with my Call Me Clover, you can see this tip is visibly lighter than the rest of the marker, and that's because I've used this tip so much that I've bent it a little bit, like it's kind of lost a little bit of its stability there. It's lost some of its color. You can see it's not even coming off on my hand that much. So I would not use a tip like this. Now, this tip here for the dark Call Me Clover is perfect. It looks exactly the way that it's supposed to. So this one's been used a little bit less. This one will deliver color nicely because it's not overused, where, you know, you need to replace your blends every so once in a while after a certain period of time. I use Call Me Clover all the time. So I tend to default to the lighter colors. So that's why I went with dark for all of the stained glass, to give more of that saturated look, but also because the tips of my Stampin' Blends in the darker colors are in better shape. So whenever you have to get really detailed, like into these very small spaces, like right here, you really want to make sure that your tip is not going to send the ink to other places. You want it to be like light as a feather. When you're coloring clothes, it's not as big of a deal. So that was just something that I wanted to mention. I'm just going to go around the places where their skin tone will be, or their hair. Just going back over the dark with the light to blend it. Whenever you're coloring with blends, you just want to be light-handed with it, because the longer your tip sits on the paper, the more likely the color is to spread. So just be very light-handed and quick with your coloring, and you shouldn't have any trouble. If you run into any trouble, especially with brighter or darker colors, you could always use your color lifter to try to lighten it up, but the color lifter will not erase it. So a lot of times we can cover up our boo-boos one way or another, but just something I wanted to make you aware of in case you're new to the blends or still adjusting to that. Okay, here's Night of Navy and Light and Dark. two hair colors that are go-to for me are Crumb Cake and Soft Suede. But I think it's just because pretty much everybody in my own family is a brunette. But if you want to change that up, we can work with grays, we could work with reds. I find that blonde is a little bit trickier to do, but we could certainly try it. So let me start with the light Crumb Cake for the little boy. And then we'll do dark Crumb Cake for the mom. If it is a mom, could be a sister or an aunt or a friend or whatever. Godmother, whoever this person is that you would be crafting your card for. Now you could stop just at the blends. You know, you could do some light and dark shading with the blends with the hair. But for me, what I was doing was, I'm going to do the same thing here where I'm going to use the dark soft suede and the light soft suede. So I'll use the dark soft suede for her. Again, that red that got into the hair, just blending that out here, and it's working. Same thing, you're going to see some of that here as I bring her hair color down. That's why I did the hair color last. Get your clothing colors in before you finish it off with the hair. Okay. And you can see there's a little bit of hair that comes down through here. Okay. And then I'll use the light soft suede for her. All right. The boys are back from their ride, so this may be where I go quiet. My son is so much fun, but he's wild and he loves to make noise when we're filming, so probably going to go quiet. This is soft suede. We're using the journaling tip and the Stampin' Right markers. Just adding in a little more detail with the hair, certainly not a must, but I like the look. Because her hair is the darkest, I'm going to use espresso. Early espresso. Here's Sahara Sand. This is nice for those lighter colored hairs, or if you're going for like sort of a salt and peppery or a gray haired look. And then I think I'm going to use espresso again, early espresso again for her hair. Okay. Now I fussy cut this image out, but just depending on what look you want for your card. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to fussy cut, this has been fussy cut and they're up on dimensionals. But if you like to keep that flat, or you like the simple stamping type thing where you're going to just stamp this image right onto it, you could always just stamp your people all right onto the card.